go into too much of my career, other than to say that when I took over the role of Director of Children's Services, I had two very encouraging comments, one from my daughter and one from a system leader. The system leader said, "Oh my God, that's got to be one of the most dangerous jobs in the country." That was then followed up in the evening by my daughter. Following a dispatches programme which had the real Baby P story, of which she said, "Are you mad?" And left it at that. I want to start with Haringey the place. Because it does have its history, and fairly or unfairly, depends how it is told. Of course, it does have the Tottenham riots, it does have Victoria Columbier, and most recently Baby P. So therefore, Haringey is very much synonymous with those events. What I would say is that maybe the borough hasn't always had the self-belief that it should have, because modern Haringey is most certainly not one that lacks confidence, lacks innovation, and has moved on greatly. What I would also say is that we have an impeccable leader, politically and chief exec-wise, who look into London and across boundaries, which I think is very, very refreshing. I guess my remit today isn't to come up here and say how well everything is going in Haringey. It's by no means perfect. There are some system challenges. What I'd also say is it's not just a service that we put out there for the community. We work very closely with our partners. I want to start by talking about the school system. There are two systems, the education system and obviously the social care system that is fairly well documented. With the school system, it really is one where Haringey is on the map, and I wish we would shout about it a little bit more. There has been most significant change. So back in 2010, Michael Gove and Downhills were at war. That just adds to the tapestry of the history, really. But transformationally, attainment, outcomes for young people, and the quality of schools has radically improved. What I would say is that where some local authorities, some counties have dispensed with education and thought, right, it's an autonomous system, let schools get on with it. Actually, Haringey didn't do that. We secured some investment, but what we did was work with local leaders and primarily tap into the collaboration and innovation that existed there. So what does it look like? So 5 years ago, less than half the schools in Haringey were good. So if you're a resident in Haringey, that's not a great statistic in which to lead with. As a community, it was fragmented. 16 schools were on the list by the DFE for intervention. By 2012, that had risen to about 63%. I started my role just in 2013 as Assistant Director for Schools and Learning, and really the only real way was up. So between 2011 and 2014, we saw some miraculous, I always think there's a bit of luck needed and timing as well, improvement. Our secondary schools really did accelerate, just in terms of quality, but attainment as well. And we were recognised in the top 3 nationally over a sustained period of 3 years. Not many people know that, or know that still in our local authority. 2016, GCSE results were the best ever, but it's a national trend and a London trend. We always look to London, and I'm sure you in the room do a fair bit of that benchmarking of what does the best actually look like. Being the social care and corporate parent that I am, looks after children, the voice of the young person, but also the outcomes for the young people are, again, of primary interest to me. I looked after children, those children in care have done extremely well, and for this year, GCSE results were the best in the country. What I would say is sustained over 5 years, they've always been in the top 10%. So therefore, Haringey's achievement is inclusive, and we're very proud of the fact that we've got 4 special schools that are co-located with our own schools. You may well say, so how and what happened in terms of that change? I have already mentioned the leader who took over after the Baby P episode. She obviously felt that schools in Haringey education was really quite important. So the leader set up a commission, this was just before I arrived, in 2012, to tackle some of the inequalities, challenges, underperformance that existed within a system and across our schools, bearing in mind less than 60% of them were good. The commission was chaired by Dame Anna Hassan, an outstanding head teacher from Hackney, and there were, as I called them, 5 wise people who made 12 recommendations. What I would say for me coming in was that I took a system that had already worked, i.e. Hackney, where some of the most transformative work really did unfold in front of me, and I plagiarised it completely by just lifting it up and moving it a couple of miles up the road. But what we did then have was this mandate in which to bring about some of that change. Outstanding for All led very much to a sort of system improvement. But of course, many people do say, so how do you get to 99% good or outstanding? Which, across the national picture, the question is often asked, so how do you do that? I think there were 4 key pieces of work there that led that to it. And of course the DfE wanted to know and came and did their own study. Quality of leadership has to stand out in amongst that. There is a little bit of luck around recruitment. We also had some stability, a little bit of changeover. What I would also say is the local authority and the role of the local authority fundamentally changed. So it wasn't doing to the system, it was facilitating the system, working with, I often call it agitating, did a fair bit of that. But the leadership in our schools had to be good. The second piece is around collaboration. I think because Haringey is a small London local authority, it enabled us to work very closely. You can walk from one end to the other. What I would also say is actually if you get the W3 from Northumberland Park and follow the journey of it to Muswell Hill, the life expectancy is a differential of 13 years. That's just a bus ride. So you can see there is a great sort of challenge in terms of deprivation, opportunity. But that collaboration was hugely important for in particular our primary schools. I would say in our secondary schools it very much was competition. But in the middle of that there's us as a local authority, very small team, trying to facilitate that change, and high expectations about what we can do always permeated. What I always said in Hackney was what you can't stand is, and I heard it on probably far too many occasions, well, what do you expect from children like this? Which was one, sad, but two, unacceptable. The use of data, we all work in a world where there is far too much data being churned around. It's how you use it, how you cut it. But with schools data, there needed to be a degree of sophistication in terms of how we use it, but also to benchmark it. And finally, and probably most importantly, was the quality of teachers. And I guess that is the same with the NHS system, is around the quality of the people that you have within your organisations. And I will come on to that again. But teacher quality, keeping teachers, maybe tapping into Teach First, was an area that we needed to look at. What we have also done is celebrated the great work that takes place in our schools with Outstanding for All. So we go to Ali Pali, which is a fantastic venue, but we celebrate the achievement of our youngsters. And going forward, what happens next? Education is going to be part of a partnership with schools. Schools-led, won't be the local authority leading it. We will be a 20% shareholder in a very commercial, viable setup, but it changes the dynamic of commissioning and then providing, rather than the local authority really having all of the responsibility. We need to shift that accountability. What's next as well is the world of STEM. The leader didn't just stop with Outstanding for All. So last year we looked at a STEM commission again, 5 wise people who came into it.
Maggie Philbin always amused me somewhat because I grew up with her and Cheggers dancing around Saturday mornings, but clearly her role has changed somewhat. But what we needed wasn't just great schools. We needed also to think about career progression. We want our youngsters who live in Tottenham to have the same opportunities, life chances, as those people and youngsters who live in other parts of London and in Haringey themselves. So we were blessed. Robert Peston, I have to say, was a great individual on that group and facilitated some really helpful conversations, but aspiration continues to grow. Children's services, go back to where I really started, and as a system, what brought about that improvement in schools is well documented and is understood, so we now want to move to a great system. Children's services, I always thought when I went there 3 years ago nearly, actually, let's see what we can do here. The unfortunate thing about children's services across the whole of the country, and I say unfortunate, is that there isn't enough good that sits across the system, across the whole country. The majority of children's services are either requires improvement, which Haringey sit on, so I don't come up here saying this is how we've done it, or inadequate, with only 25% deemed good by a regulator Ofsted. I think one of the big challenges for me has been the quality of people, and I say that and always say that because I believe the key ingredient to that change and working with that variation are good people. And I'm not just talking about social workers. I've got some amazing social workers, family support workers, but the variability that exists, but also the pool of workers out there to recruit. They have a choice when they're in London. How do you go about doing that? Succession planning, incentivising becomes very difficult. The director's review is how I put it. I brought Ofsted in, which seems a bit odd, bringing Ofsted in. But what we wanted to do was to know how good we were. So it informed our self-evaluation. How well do we know our organisations? It was a frightening experience, particularly as I paid for this guy to come in and give me a good kicking while I rolled around on the floor. But we came up with 10 recommendations from it. So not only was it the regulating, but it was also, okay, so diagnostically, what are you going to do next? We took it back to the basics. You know, fundamentally, see children in a timely way, hear the voice of the young person. Demand and volumes, and you'll know a lot about this, and it exercises the mind all of the time about the presenting demand. We work very closely with hospitals, Whitton, North Mid, and we often hear about demand, volumes, seasonal change. We had exactly the same. Where does that demand come from? Apart from obviously the community, would be our schools and the huge amount of referrals that we get from the police. What we're also seeing is it's not just Haringey that are probably looking at a 30% increase, it's the rest of London as well. And trying to understand that, whilst at the same time having the challenge of taking £25 million out of an £80 million budget is a real challenge. Again, I'm the DCS representative for 5 local authorities in North Central London on the STP. Have done that for the last year and a half. So I know all about the financial gap, the reduction that is needed across the system, how social care are trying to work with and alongside colleagues. The challenge of the envelope is one that is hard to understand. But within children's services, again, I think it's a ticking time bomb for all children's services, and I know adult services are exactly the same. The future world of multi-agency is an intriguing one. And that's for sure. What I have seen in the STP is the fact that health, social care genuinely are coming together, working together. I suppose our challenge is about not being transactional, but trying to be transformative. Transformation is all well and good, except when the number that you're trying to ameliorate keeps going on up. and starts to begin to dampen that. I guess my challenge has been, how do I keep the voice of the young person in a room that is dominated by health providers, trust executives, council executives, and to say the preventative agenda isn't such an important one, but clearly not a big ticket item. Working with the police is, again, most insightful, and I say insightful mainly because I have the pleasure of working with HMIC on the response to the safeguarding report, but I know they are going to be working very differently, reducing 33 London areas to 17 patches. I've talked a little bit about the STP programme, and of which I know it would be so easy to walk away from the table, but clearly not particularly collaborative, not easy when you are looking at local agreements, but also different ways of working. And the CCG have really taken some sort of changes and look like they're beginning to emerge. Well, what should we be proud of? And you often forget, don't you? And I imagine we're all, a day like this gives us the opportunity just to reflect on what are we proud of? What have we done within our own organisations? Just a couple there, just to pull out. The bottom one I'll start with is the Local Government Chronicle Awards. And what I always say is, who would have thought that Haringey Children's Services would have actually won the LGA awards, never mind be shortlisted, which I hasten to add is primarily for the education success story that we have there. But we have a way of working. We think differently now about CSE. We work so closely with our health colleagues, our police colleagues, partners, even though that we know that we don't have the money that we did have 5 years ago. The imperative is there still to work together, track these young people, and ensure that when we do have a thematic, which will come at some point around either CSE, domestic abuse, neglect, early help, we're standing shoulder to shoulder. So I think that is one of our greatest achievements, is just the relationships that we have with our partners in a buffeting system and staying strong. But I always think, just don't forget the basics. I had an away day for not just my service, but for partners as well about 2 weeks ago. I had the impeccable Ian Thomas, who is from Rotherham, the DCS there, who came to speak to staff. But we talked about system leadership, but also system responsibility, because what I wanted everyone in a room, not just think it was my responsibility as a system leader, but where's their responsibility as a contributor, as a worker. And I love this quote from the King's Fund, which just talks about the practice of system leadership and being comfortable with chaos. We all know that we're dealing with chaos, what seems like on an everyday basis, but how do we provide that resilience and focus to ensure that we don't lose track? It's not easy. It really does need that combination of consistency, purpose and flexibility. You have to take a different route so many times. What I do know is that Haringey Children's Services is still not yet good enough, and it takes time, of which we don't often have that to achieve some of those results. What I would also say is getting that stability of core staff who then buy in, who will feel that they can grow, contribute, which again reduces some of that buffeting in the system. I'm not going to linger too much on this slide, other than to say how the way we work here, behaviours, values, culture, which you could spend all day talking about. But some of those values, I've talked about collaboration, but we don't give ourselves that time to reflect, think about, hang on, what we've achieved, what we need to do. The values, I often talk about kindness here, and the need for kindness, not just the curiosity. Curiosity shouldn't just be for social workers, but it should be for all of us about begging the question and being curious about what's around us and what happens in those young people's lives. And finally, the culture across the system has to be integrated, and of course I'm going to say this, has to be child-centred as well. So finally, and in summary, and sorry for the romp through this, personal reflections. working differently. What I have been trying to do is to get out and work across. So I have been contributing to the health agenda in a small way, and the police change that's taking place as well. The school system, I often say, where on earth did that come from? Because it really was a collective will, I think, from the system, which was primarily from the leaders. Health and social care, I always say, where are all the children? I sit in those meetings and say, don't forget the children, they'll be your next either population of obesity, asthma, chronic disease, whatever it might be, but prevention, we mustn't lose sight of that, which is why I'm proud to be the SRO of the children's work stream. Police, safeguarding every child matters. It has to have a change there. It's overburdening the system. They need to think differently. And what I will just say is finally we're all system leaders. Yeah, what is a system leader? I think it's a combination of everything I've talked about in amongst it, but we're all system contributors. But we will have a part to play, and it's not always easy. We're still partway through that journey, but slowly getting there. I'll pause there. Thank you very much.
Jon, what a turnaround. We had Sonia this morning going from a sea of orange to a sea of green, and yet again we've seen a great turnaround, and yet again we've heard the quality of leadership and collaboration being some of the things that have made a difference. So you've got it up on the slide up here. Should we take the first question, Jon? When will you make service improvement a proper career in the NHS? So you're going to do that then from where you are, you? Great.
Well,
what's your thoughts?
You know what? It's we're looking at the local safeguarding board at the moment, and there's reform taking place across that. And I think we don't sit in one place. We move from one place, whether it be the local safeguarding board, whether it be the STP, the board, which I'm missing today, and where do we make that contributor? But it has to be around service improvement. And what fascinated me was just some of the Intermountain material that was shared at a clinical cabinet, just by again reducing that variability and where that system improvement came from. I think there's a lot to learn from each other when it comes to service improvement. It doesn't primarily come from children's services or from an NHS, but there's a great way of sharing, because what we do know is that we're so closely aligned. So open mind.
What we will do though is give that as an action for Adam and his team about a career in service development, so I agree with that one. I can do that as chair. Should we do the top one again about how do you manage the big financial challenge as well as improving morale and improvement?
Yeah, so he takes a big deep breath on that one, because I think for the 3 years I've been there, and even the first week that I took over, I was handed a £3 million deficit in year, which in scale is so much less than some of the trusts that are managing. It's really difficult with demand rising. What I've tried to protect is the workers, frontline workers. So although we've been taking out money, it hasn't been from my social workers, family support workers. We've had to look at some of the placements, so working with commissioners to very much look at cost of placements. What I would also say is I don't need the whole £25 million, and that's what I often say to the leader. Look, we know we have to contribute, the whole system has to do that, but we've had to work on agency spend. So ours was running at £6 million. We took £2 million out there in 2 years, which was helpful, but it was around grip. So we reduced our sickness from 14.5 days per person to 10.5, which is broadly in line with the council average. Still way to go there, but there are a combination of factors. What I would say is if I spent as much time working with how do you reduce the financial envelope as I could do on practice, then I think actually we'd be getting nearer to that good and outstanding rating rather than the financial matters. I understand we have to do it though. Okay,
so last question, we'll take the top one again. So what's the single biggest factor in getting you to outstanding rating?
So I suppose it's about walking before one can run. So I'll change that. What's your biggest challenge to getting to good? Because the system is challenged there. I would say the quality and the depth of the people, my ability to recruit, because the biggest asset are the people there. But the biggest piece is around the variability that exists. So we're still talking about compliance. Didn't know if I was going to mention that word or not, but we have too much variability about compliance across the piece. And I would also say that's not just frontline workers, that's heads of service. So looking at some of the cycle that needs to be happening. So just looking at the funding and the monthly amelioration of the balance sheet, that has to happen for everyone, and when that gets missed it comes back to hit you. So some of those basics about listening to the voice of the child, supervision taking place, I think all of these then contribute to getting to good. And what does outstanding look is they naturally happen without you having to think about compliance and the stick, which is what we don't use, but that I think is how you move then into that real creative and imaginative world of social work.
John, thank you. Thank you for your time. And one of the things I will take away from today is that kids awards and what you're doing around celebrating their achievements. That's fantastic. John, it's been a wonderful having you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.